In the Coddling of the American Mind, the authors talk about three great untruths that the American people have adopted and that really affects the American psyche. The first is the untruth of fragility, that what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. In essence, that we are fragile, can't handle a lot. The second is the untruth of emotional reasoning, that you should always trust your feelings. If you perceive something to be a certain way, it probably is. If you perceive someone to have ill intent, they probably do. The third is the untruth of us versus them, that life is a battle between good people and evil people. So rather than simply it being good ideas and bad ideas, or I think I'm correct and I think you're wrong, it is, I think my position is good and I think you are evil in yours. And these three untruths are setting up young people especially to not be able to cope with the world and to not be able to handle life well because they have been too protected, too coddled. And this has been done through parenting and through a perceived fragility, especially with children, that children are fragile and that they should be treated as such. And along with different parenting styles, technology has really affected these great untruths and made a whole generation, the iGen, those born in 1955 and 1995 and beyond, setting them up for just not being able to handle and cope with reality. I loved this book. I appreciated that it is really recent. It was written just a few years ago, so it is understanding not only these broad truths, but our specific time period and what is happening right now in America and in the American people. And I appreciate it because it assesses my own generation without simply saying like they're stupid or they're babies, but it goes into why we think the way that we do, what has kind of caused this shift in thinking, and how we can do better. I appreciate the author's in-depth approach, and that it's really multifaceted. They don't just point to one specific problem and say that this is the reason everything's this way or whatever. They talk about parenting, they talk about counseling, they talk about technology, a few different things, and it's really well done. I also was surprised to find out that the authors aren't strictly conservative, and I think that adds to the book. The sections on parenting and on technology, which I think kind of go hand in hand because parents often control the technology kids get, honestly really saddened me as well as surprised me. It saddened me because so many parents think that they are doing the best for their children, that they're setting their kids up for success, and that they're protecting their children, but they are coddling them to a point that is unhelpful, through safetyism, through not letting them play independently, especially with the authors talk about how children need to learn how to make risk assessments when they're playing independently, and need to learn how to settle disputes between themselves without immediately a parent rushing in, and how these, even at a really early stage, set children up to be able to cope with the world, to be able to assess risks, etc. And Also, technology. So surprised at the statistics of how technology is affecting people and how parents really are not aware of the risk that technology brings when they give their, like 8, 10, even their 15-year-old a phone, or I think that they just aren't really fully aware of the statistics behind technology and phones related to depression and anxiety, etc. I think that there are a few things that the church can do to step into this situation, and I think the first thing is quite obvious, but the church should talk about this. I think that there is a belief that pastors, that Christian leaders, especially pastors and leaders in a church, shouldn't overstep their bounds, that they are meant to preach, to care for people. But when you start talking about how people should parent, when you talk about how people should use their technology, stuff like that, it can be seen as not in their realm, and that should not be true. The church needs to have a theology surrounding these things. They need to develop a theology of technology, a theology of emotion, and trusting your feelings, or rather fighting against the idea of trusting your feelings. They need to develop a theology of parenting, and be willing to speak about these things and speak into these things. There is so little discussion about this in the church, and as I said earlier, I think parents are largely uninformed about how these things are affecting their children, especially, and will affect them as they leave their home and go out into the world. And the church needs to be willing to talk to parents about not being concerned with safetyism. Talk to the parents about about a use of technology, especially with their children, and develop a biblical basis for these things and be able to speak into them, because it is so needed.